Welcome back to the podcast. We're now into autumn here in Valencia, meaning cooler mornings where you are tempted to put on a jacket in the morning but resist because you know by the afternoon it'll be somewhere between 25 and 30 degrees C and you'll be carrying around an unruly jacket for the rest of the day and probably leaving it in a cafe somewhere. The only time you want to be carrying a light jacket is when you go out in the evening, just in case the temperature drops off a bit to take the edge off. This podcast has the title, The Top 10 Tips for Anyone Looking to Move to Valencia, but we have a special emphasis on our North American clients here, because things are very different here than they are in North America. However, it's not the only thing we'll be talking about. You'll want to hear the tips though, and remember, number one is essential if you're selling a property before coming to Spain. It's a tax thing, and it's a very important tax thing, so stick around until we get to that. Also included in the podcast, in the last month we've been celebrating our 25-year anniversary, and you'll be able to hear some interviews from the event we put on for our clients in this episode. We've been listing properties, writing blogs, of which we will mention the contents here, and of course, we've been selling apartments and houses. That's what we do. Sometimes coming back after the summer break takes time to get going again, but we really had no choice this year due to so many people here visiting. The latest news, or rather the latest rumour, has the Golden Visa ending on the 21st of October. Now, we cannot find any proof of this apart from a couple of blogs. Nothing in the government's communications, nothing in the press that details the plans for sure, and it may be that a few constitutional lawyers jumped the gun at announcing this on their blogs. That's where we read it. But we're working with that date in mind at the moment. It may not be that. With this end of the Golden Visa coming up, we've found a way of guaranteeing getting the application in on time even if the property is not yet registered. What you need to do is sign the deposit contract at the notary's office and deposit the funds for the eventual purchase in a Spanish bank. All of them. You'll need a certificate from the bank to show the funds are there, and some banks are easier to work with than others on this. Looking at you, Santander, for your useless services, of which possibly more later. You'll also need your health insurance, your document detailing how you are not a threat, i.e. your police record, and all the other usual stuff when applying. But the key is the deposit and the money in your bank, so you can move forward without having yet bought. You have 6 months for completion from that point. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Another bit of news, and it's bad, is that the new Valencian government has put in plans for a 4-lane motorway into the city from the south, where the extension of the central part was previously planned. This goes against everything that the residents of Valencia want, and a huge protest is planned along with a big petition which actually got 17,000 signatures on the first day, mine included of course. We will keep you informed about this, but if that's the hill the PP government have decided to die on, then good luck with it. Our Valencia Property community on Facebook is now up and running and being useful for a lot of people, where we detail events, make restaurant recommendations and keep people up to date with what's going on in and around Valencia. Once you have bought with us, you'll be invited to get that particular golden ticket, but don't apply before because you'll be rejected. It's only people who've bought with us. On the blog this month, we talked about our event, and you can hear what people thought of Valencia and the process of working with us right now. Here's an insert taken from our YouTube video compilation, Why Valencia and Why Valencia Property.
Valencia was sort of, honestly, a completely random choice.
We fell totally in love with this city.
It has a laid-back feel compared to Madrid or Barcelona.
It's relaxed and tranquilo.
It was so easy.
And then we said, well, could you just show us like a house in each of these neighborhoods so we get a sense of what money can buy? And we left with the house.
Oh, wow.
From the time we contacted Jessica to the time we actually passed papers was about 5 weeks, which was not at all what we expected.
Oh, it felt like the unicorn.
Oh, it's just a wonderful neighborhood. The vibe is nice.
It's a full house, but it's walkable to everything that we need. So it's walkable to pharmacies and grocery stores and restaurants and bars.
It was very close to the beach.
We haven't got beyond the stage of saying, wow, I can't believe that we locked into this.
Our quality of life has increased Tenfold.
dramatically.
The living here is very relaxed.
Culturally, there's so much to offer here.
I feel safe. I feel part of the community there.
It's just like paradise.
And they help you with your visa, can help you with your padrone.
But they also show us properties in the surroundings.
They go above and beyond just trying to help you find a place to purchase.
With the gas store and with the avocado and everything. Really, you have do a great job.
Get these guys because they're local. They know the market. They know who to hire for every little thing.
It is stressful to buy a house, period. It is especially stressful doing it as an expat, as an immigrant.
Connecting with Valencia Properties made it so much more of an enjoyable process.
I will definitely recommend them.
You need experts.
We hope you enjoyed that. It's always good to get different voices on apart from mine, of course. So, on the blog this month, what do? We wrote about quality control in terms of what properties appear on Valencia Property website, and we talked about the big differences that you can find when you come to live in Valencia and even Spain compared with other countries. On quality control, the first thing was, why do we decide to list things? So, the property has to have something to recommend it for our clients, whether that's location, price, facilities, amenities locally, or even something special like a terrace, an amazing makeover, or potential to be a fantastic place, even if it's currently as rough as the side of a matchbox. It might even be as simple as knowing that we have a particular client in mind for a property after they've gone away empty-handed previously, but we know what will suit them. Once we see something in a property, then it's time to list it. However, we see hundreds and thousands of properties, both listed and on visits, and the vast majority of them we don't list. So what stops us? Price, of course, is the main thing. It's almost always the price. Who knew? We're going to use some examples, and this doesn't necessarily mean that these agents always have ridiculously expensive properties with no quality control, of course. But there's a property in the article which I wrote about this that is an absolutely ridiculous price. The justification is that it's been redesigned by a renowned Valencian architect. Honestly, I don't care. It's still over €6,500 per square metre in an area with an average price of €3,100 per square metre. In the same area, we'll soon have a much better place for €300,000 less with a huge terrace. Not to be outdone, the most expensive place for sale in Valencia is an eye-watering €12,000 per square metre. And if you want to see it, then it's linked in the article which you can find in the show notes. We talk more about quality control, so head over for a read. Regarding the big differences between living in Spain and other places, or more or less Valencia and other places, we talked about why mornings are key and the need to plan with precision any meetings you may want to have. So why are mornings key? If you need to do something, you need to do it in that extremely important period between 10 and 2 in the morning. However, and here's the difficult bit, don't go at 11 because the person you will need to see will probably be off having almuerzo, mid-morning breakfast. They won't be back for 10 minutes. When you get told 10 minutes, it's really 45. And don't go at 12 because there'll be a huge queue of all those people who are waiting for them to get back from their almuerzo, and they finished their almuerzo 15 minutes ago. So they go back at 11:45 and there's a big queue of people waiting. And don't go at 10. Because you'll be at the back of that queue of people who know you only get attention at 10 and you need to get there before the person you need to speak to goes off for their almuerzo. And don't go at 1 because what you need doing might take more than half an hour, and today they may be leaving at 1:30 due to an appointment somewhere. And don't go at 1:45 because they've probably already gone, and if they haven't, then they'll make the person currently being seen last right up until 2 p.m, but no longer. And then, of course, they leave. So yeah, make sure to get things done in the morning, but it requires precision planning to get the right time and the right space, because they won't be open to the public in the afternoon. To read more about this, including what mañana really means, because it depends on the context, then take a look at the link in the show notes. I think you'll enjoy it. On to today's main theme then. What are the top tips for people wanting to move to Spain in 2024 and beyond, possibly 2025? And the most important thing is, sell your house before becoming a Spanish resident. And when we say a Spanish resident, we mean a Spanish tax resident. The most important thing is that you sell your house before you become a Spanish tax resident, as if you don't, you might well get a whacking great tax bill. Don't come and live in Spain in the first half of a year in which you complete on the sale of your house in the States, in the UK or wherever. Otherwise, you are likely to be liable for tax in Spain as a Spanish tax resident. And this is applicable to all nationalities, by the way. Therefore, if you think that at any stage in the future you might be selling your house, bring that forward and put off your move until the deal is done. If you sell in the first half of any year, then delay your arrival until mid-July. And remember, if you've been here for any length of time in the first half of that year, then those days count too. So if you spent the whole of February in Spain, then wait until the middle of August. You may need to delay until August, even September, to be on the safe side if you've been here for a few months beforehand. Equally, if you still haven't sold but expect to before the end of the year, then that's okay too. But make sure to do everything to complete before the year's end after arriving in the second half of the year, because if not, and your sale goes into the following year, you are already a Spanish tax resident at that point. This is probably the number one most important thing for people coming over to live in Spain from any country if they're selling a house. If you don't know about this beforehand and make a mistake, the cost can be huge. Even if you don't have a tax bill in your home country due to the property being a primary residence, for example, you may still get the bill here if you are a Spanish tax resident. Everything else pales in comparison with that, but let's go with everything else. There's no MLS in Spain. So for our American clients, they're used to having an MLS, what's called a multi-listing system in America, in North America in general. It's in Canada as well. However, here at Valencia Property, we act as a personal MLS or a personal property shopper for our clients because there's no MLS here in Spain. When you see properties advertised on portals, individual agency websites and social media, that is the selling agent who is advertising them, and they will happily take your money too as a commission as a buyer, while really looking after the interests of the seller. In Valencia, both buyer and seller pay the agent, just like with the split commission in the States to the buyer's agent and the seller's agent. Other parts of Spain are often different depending on the area. In most of Spain, the seller pays, which means that money is hardwired into the price of the property. In order to have the greatest choice of properties and an agent who is representing you, the buyer, without any conflict of interest, you need an agency that knows your requirements, knows the market, knows the pitfalls and traps, and looks out for you. Here at Valencia Property, that's what we do. The company was designed right from the start to be your partner in getting you as a buyer exactly the right property at the same time as giving you the greatest choice available. Individual agencies may just have one property which suits your needs, or none, as mentioned in our post earlier this year about the increasing difficulty of finding a property in Valencia, which you can read in the show notes. But they continue to advertise sold properties as they have no stock. Here at Valencia Property, if it's out there, we'll find it for you. Stop worrying about taxes. So, this contradicts the first point I already mentioned, and that was a tax you should be worried about. The other taxes, not so much. For example, stop worrying about the wealth tax. It's not going to apply to 90% of you, and if you're in the 10%, then maybe you don't need to worry about it either. The day-to-day costs of living in Spain and the yearly costs of big-ticket items like healthcare, community fees, property taxes and more are so low compared with the States and other countries that you will likely be better off here in a tangible sense, as well as all of the intangibles. And you can read more about this at our link in the show notes about Spanish taxes. But what are the intangibles? Well, things like going out and feeling safe, being in a climate that suits, getting off the hamster wheel of having to make money just to keep up with the Joneses, having amazing scenery around you, maxing out your 401k because living costs are just so high post-retirement that you know you'll not be able to afford more than a few years, and having time for your family and friends. But even the tangibles are cheaper than you might think. When you go out to eat, then the meal costs what it costs, and that is relatively cheap even for a Michelin-style meal. It doesn't cost what it costs plus 20% for tips like it does in the States, for example. Yes, you can leave a tip if you want, but just round the amount up. A €66 meal, just leave 70 if you want to tip, but it's not obligatory. For example, you don't get the option or obligation to add the tip onto card readers here. If the service is awful, and it might be, then don't leave anything. If you don't feel like it, don't tip. The next tip. Valencia's small. You're never far away from anything. You don't have to be right in the centre. You don't have to be right by the beach. It's impossible to be in the centre and by the beach. You can be almost doing both at the same time because Valencia isn't big. The centre of the city is almost slap bang in the actual centre of the city. The furthest you can get away from the Plaza del Ayuntamiento, the town hall square, and still be in Valencia is 4.9 kilometres or 3 miles at the port end of Nazareth. The Malvarosa beach is 4.6 kilometres to the east, just under 3 miles. The end of Benicalap to the north is 3.85 kilometres, so 2.5 miles. The new riverbed at the end of Avenida del Cid is 3.8 kilometres to the west, again 2.5 miles. And the new La Fe hospital to the south is 3 kilometres, so less than 2 miles. Essentially, Valencia is 8.5 kilometres wide and 6.5 kilometres north to south. Essentially, at a brisk walk, you can be anywhere in Valencia from the centre in under an hour. On a bike, maybe half an hour, and similarly on a bus or metro. Therefore, you don't need to be in a particular area to get everything from Valencia as a city, though obviously there are areas that are more attractive to be than others, areas that you will prefer to others. Next tip. You are totally and utterly safe here. Now, as a general rule of thumb, Valencia is safe, very safe. You may be unfortunate and get a bag snatched or an unattended phone taken from a table. It's rare, but it happens, we can't deny it. You most likely won't have to worry about being mugged, stabbed, shot, dying due to being in the wrong place at the wrong time when an active shooter appears out of nowhere, or any of the other fears that you may have in your own country. Valencia is one of the safest big cities in the world, and the truth is, so are most Spanish cities. Oh, and based on recency bias, no hurricanes, no floods, or even a fear about big earthquakes being just around the corner. That's for our Californian friends. Next tip, money transfers should not be done directly. Logic suggests that the fewer entities involved in a currency transfer, the cheaper it will be. Logic is wrong. Don't do money transfers directly from a US bank to a Spanish bank. They'll rip you off at both ends. The US bank on the exchange rate they give you, and the Spanish bank charging you for receiving the money from abroad. You have plenty of options for doing a transfer, but currency companies, Wise, Revolut, and others are key. However, you can save even more by using one specific currency company, Currencies Direct, because they have agreements in place with banks here, and they also make it so there are no international transfers involved, meaning you don't get charged here for receiving the money, and your exchange rate will be better. Up to now, the service has been limited to certain states of the USA, but very soon it will be possible from every state. Equally, just in case you come from one of those states not currently covered, we know of another company that have an agreement in every state, and there are ways around that restriction anyway if you become a resident here first. The next tip, trust the process, but remember it's not the same here. Buying property is an enjoyable process in the most part, believe it or not, at least when you do it with us. The process of buying is rather different though. As stated above, there's no such thing as an MLS giving you access to all the properties on the market. Equally, most agencies are selling agents, meaning they will only offer you what they have, and that's where we come in. We take you through the whole process from start to finish. Let us know what you are looking for on the form. We include on most posts on the blog these days, and we can work with you from there. Remember something important though, and very important. The further ahead of time you contact us, the better the chance we have of finding you the right place or guiding you in the right direction. If you turn up in Valencia without any planning beforehand or give yourself just a weekend to find something, it will more than likely not happen. Our next tip: clean up your credit history. Now, we know you buy things on credit in the States because you get better deals if you do, and it helps with your credit rating. However, things work differently here if you want a mortgage. You need to show affordability. This means banks and mortgage companies will ask you for your income details and your outgoings on your current loans and mortgages before determining how much or even whether to offer you a mortgage. If you have car loans, an RV loan, furniture being paid for on credit, etc., then get rid of these loans before applying in Spain if you can, and your affordability check will be much cleaner. Remember, Spanish banks will offer you up to 70% of the price of the property in general on quite favourable interest terms, but affordability is around 30 to 35% of net income. For example, if you earn $3,000 per month, they'll offer you a mortgage repayment up to $1,000 a month. $6,000 would mean $2,000. But if you are already paying out a lot of other things, they will be taken into consideration. As an example, if you got $175,000 mortgage, 70% on a property of $250,000 at a fixed rate of 4% over 20 years, that would mean a repayment of €1,071 per month. If you could pay $2,000 per month, then it would allow you to take the repayment term down to around 9 years. And those repayments are made up from the start of capital and interest, as opposed to interest only. If you're looking for a mortgage, then you can request a pre-approval by contacting Mortgage Direct, who are our suppliers for mortgages. Just click on the link in the show notes and you'll be taken to their page to give you a quote. The next tip: do your own research, but use us as your primary resource. So, do your own research. Of course, this term has been hijacked by climate change deniers, COVID skeptics, flat earthers, election truthers, and more. What they mean is go down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories on YouTube until you end up attacking your own Capitol building with a bunch of half-illiterate racists and rednecks. When we say do your own research, it involves our blog, a serious study of Valencia and the area, or whichever part of Spain you're going to, and some rather long listening sessions to this podcast's previous episodes, amongst other things. Know what you want and you're more likely to get it. And the way to know what you want is to know the place, know your requirements, and know what's available. That's what we do here at Valencia Property. We're the #1 resource for information about Valencia and the property market here. Our next tip: healthcare is inexpensive, comparatively. The possible extra tax cost we talk about above is totally offset by not being put into bankruptcy if you ever get a slight cold by an abusive healthcare system. Private healthcare is really inexpensive here compared with the States, and you are covered from the start, not just after the first 10k which you pay yourself like you do in the States. You pay your insurance, and if you want to see a doctor, you go to see a doctor. It doesn't cost anything. And remember, state healthcare is good too and free at the point of use if you qualify for it. And if you're working here and paying into the system, then you do qualify for it. How affordable is healthcare? Well, my whole team at Valencia Property is covered and we pay €320 per month. Not each, that's for all of us. Next, sort out your visa. You're allowed up to 90 days with your Schengen visa in Spain as long as you haven't been in the Schengen area in the previous 90 days. But if you intend to stay longer, then you need to have another visa of some type. Whether that visa is the non-lucrative visa, the digital nomad visa, the entrepreneur's visa, the soon-to-be-disappeared golden visa, the student visa, or whatever. You'll need to sort it out mostly before coming over. The exceptions to this can be the digital Nomad visa and possibly the golden visa, which you can apply for whilst in Spain on the original 90-day visa. You can read more about the digital Nomad visa on our blog in the show notes. Whichever visa you're going to come with, you'll need to know everything about applying for it beforehand. And you can read our post about the different visa options in doubt, and guess where you can find it? Yeah, it's in the show notes. Our big bonus tip. This is tip number 12, but it's really number 1. It's even more important, if you like, than the tax thing. I know I said 10 tips at the start, but there's an 11th, which was the previous one, for those counting. And here's a 12th. It's also essential to know if you want your move to Valencia or any other part of Spain to be successful. The number 1 tip, but for some reason I've left it until here last, is never, but never, believe anything anyone writes on Facebook in an expat group. They are excellent for the unimportant stuff like restaurant recommendations, best local vet for your parrot, where you can find a Krispy Kreme donut shop, etc. Oh, you can't. But for the important stuff, beware. If you get a message saying DM, it's a scam. If someone says I can help you but doesn't say how on the post, ignore them. It's a scam. If someone recommends themselves but nobody else recommends them, there's a reason. The truth is, we get recommended massively on Facebook by our clients who have used us. But it's difficult to tell that when some companies who shall remain nameless post the same message every time someone asks a question about moving to Valencia or Spain, but never seem to actually answer the questions there. Weird that, isn't it? One of them even says they have 20 plus years of experience in the market when we know they arrived in Valencia just 2 years ago and haven't got a clue. So, how do you see who is genuine? I refer you back to the quote earlier about doing your own research in a good way, and then ask, why don't you ask yourself the following? Do they have a blog with long-form weekly posts about everything to do in the market with Valencia, which has been around for 2 decades, in which you can get all of the required information for free? Do they have a monthly podcast? You're listening to it now. Do they answer people's questions honestly and fully? Do they offer free calls and consultations? Do they have a 5-star rating in Google and a 4.9 on Facebook? And yes, I still resent the guy who didn't use us and gave us a 1-star rating because we never answered the message we didn't see. Do they stack up as an expert in the field? At Valencia Property, we do. We're visible, we're reliable. We live here and we're here for the long term. We don't want to have to avoid you when we see you on the street. We want you to come along to one of our events. So we do the best job possible and get the best results. Finally, for this month then, it's time to let you know what's happening in the next few months in terms of work and holidays. So next week, there are 2 holidays on the 9th and 12th of October. The 1st of November is a holiday, and then in December there are holidays on the 6th and 8th of December, plus the bridge day between the 2, because we do things like that. There are holidays around Christmas, of course, and we generally try to avoid visits from the 23rd of December to the 6th of January, which is King's Day, when the Christmas and New Year period ends. Yes, Spain has a lot of holidays. It's a place for holidays, but it's also a place that's great to live because there are plenty of holidays. It can be frustrating to get things done with so many holidays, of course, but that's part of the allure of living here. You don't come here to work 7 days a week and 52 weeks and 365 days a year. It's más tranquilo. So until next time, have a good one. We hope you've enjoyed the podcast. If you want to get in touch with us on information@valencia-property.com and we'll get straight back to you. And remember, use the show notes, read the articles, and then contact us and ask your questions.